My name is Noah Newman, Technology Editor with StripTill Farmer. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar, Strip Tilling for Your Farm with Environmental Tillage Systems. So if you want to learn more about strip till, you are definitely in the right place. Our presenter is Sean Arthur. He's Regional Sales Manager with ETS. And we're also joined by Mike and Tricia Jaeger, fifth generation farmers from North Central Iowa, and they are 100% strip till. So looking forward to learning about their operation. And we're going to do some Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, if you scroll to the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A box there. Just get your questions typed in there, and we'll get those answered at the end of the presentation. We're also recording today's session, so if you miss anything or want to go back and rewatch it or share it with any of your coworkers, you can do that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you, Sean, to get us started here.
Thanks, Noah. Well, I'm happy to be here today. As Noah said, my name is Sean Arthur. I'm a Regional Sales Manager with Environmental Tillage Systems. We're commonly known for our SoilWarrior branded strip till equipment. We've been doing this for about 20 years now, and we've learned a few things and feel as though we've got a lot of good information to share with you. So happy to be here today. I am joining you from North Central Iowa. That's where I live and farm. Environmental Tillage Systems is based out of Faribault, Minnesota. So not too far from my home location that we are right here. So as Noah said, we're going to start out with a little bit of information about strip till. That's going to be the main focus, more so than the specific SoilWarrior equipment. But we want to keep this as an educational piece, talking about what strip till can do for your farm and share some of the stuff that we've learned over the years. As we get through this today, if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is seanarthur@soilwarrior.com. My cell phone number's up there, and I truly do enjoy talking to farmers from across the Midwest. That's the area that I'm covering here, so I do enjoy talking about your farm, answering strip till questions, and then hopefully we can find a way that a SoilWarrior might be a good fit for your operation. I want to start out with a little bit of something to think about here. It's a quote from the famous hockey player Wayne Gretzky. He was quoted as saying, a good hockey player plays to where the puck is. A great hockey player plays to where the puck is going to be. So strip tillage is one of the fastest growing practices in agriculture right now. Agriculture is constantly evolving as farmers look for new and improved ways to help grow and expand their farming operation. This quote's what really came to my mind and resonated, because we can't stay content with where we're at. We need to constantly be looking towards the future and figure out ways that we can advance our farming operation and improve what we're doing. And I think strip till really plays into that, because some of the methods from the past have become outdated. Full width tillage specifically, I think we have an opportunity to be better at the farming that we're doing out here, being more precise with our fertilizer placement, being more deliberate with the tillage that we're doing, and strip till gives us the opportunity to do that. As I shared before, ETS, so Environmental Tillage Systems, based out of Faribault, Minnesota, and it's been over 20 years that we've been in business. We were started by a farmer who had the intention of finding a better way to farm. He was getting disappointed with the amount of waste that was happening on his farm, whether it was the extra operations that he was doing with passes across the field for soil preparation and fertilizer application. He looked at some of those as being a little bit redundant as he was overworking the soil. And then he was looking at some of the inefficiencies that he was having out there with the way that he was farming his ground. So he wanted to focus on a way to create a strip, put the fertilizer down there, and he had this idea of creating a piece of strip tillage equipment that could be functional, practical, and deliver effective strips across his farm. We've had a lot of learnings over the last 20 years, but we've got some offerings that can fit into almost any aspect of row crop agriculture that you guys are doing out there. We have SoilWarriors from the rocky conditions up in the New York and the Northeast to some of the dry, tough, sandier conditions that they've got down in Oklahoma and Texas. Some of the most lush farm ground, blackest dirt that you could imagine in the heart of the Midwest. And we have people using SoilWarriors in all of those environments. Sometimes they're doing it for different goals or different reasons. Some of our producers are focusing on the efficiency side of it. They want to be more prudent with the inputs that they're putting out there, where other producers are focusing more on top-end production results. If you think about the world record corn yield that's been set by Mr. David Hula, he did that on strip tillage. He did it behind a SoilWarrior, and he's bested his own record a few different times. So that just reassures me that what we're doing out here is really giving us top-end potential, because the best corn yields in the world are grown behind a SoilWarrior, and he's proving time and time again that this is a practice that is really valuable. So as we look at strip tillage, I know we've got some people on the call here today or the webinar that could be coming into this and just maybe thinking about strip tillage. Hopefully we've got some people that are already seeing some of these benefits, but strip tillage as a concept or what it's doing out here, we're trying to combine multiple operations into a single pass across the field. It gives us the opportunity to prepare a seed bed, to put our nutrients down in the proper place, and give our planter and crop a chance to really set the stage for top end production. And we're doing this also being conservation minded when we do it. So we're going to be reducing soil erosion, helping preserve organic matter, reducing soil moisture loss, and then also being better with the compaction that happens out there in the field. So each of these brings value to a farming operation in maybe some different ways. First and foremost up there on the list was seedbed preparation. I mean, if we're being more efficient and removing passes across the field, all of those benefits can be lost if we're not producing an environment where the seed can succeed. So we want to make sure that our strips that we're creating are doing a nice job of tilling that soil, managing the residue, and getting the nutrients mixed into that zone where the seed's going to be placed. On the flip side of it, if we're looking over to the conservation side of it, strip tillage is working on 30-inch rows. We're creating about a 10-inch strip. So we're leaving roughly 20 inches that's undisturbed. So we're working about a third of the field. That's leaving 2/3 of the field that is undisturbed. That area that's not tilled up is going to be, you're not wasting your fuel, your equipment, your energy to till up an area that doesn't need to be tilled. So that area between the strips is going to be better for carrying the load of your tractors, your combine, your sprayer. You're going to have a more robust soil structure in that area to help carry that equipment across the field. So you're not getting the compaction when you drive on those areas. You're also going to be leaving some of our surface or our residue on the surface. So the last year's crop, whether it's going to be a corn bean rotation, maybe it's heavy corn residue, that fodder that was left over from last year's crop is going to be sitting up there at the surface, which is going to be an opportunity to help prevent erosion because it's going to help buffer that soil from wind, from rain, from anything else that could be trying to steal it across your farm. And then as we get later into the season, that fodder or residue that's left on the surface is also going to help us reduce moisture loss. So when we get into those times of the year that are hot and dry, typically July and August, where we could be begging for a rain, that's going to, again, act like a buffer where it's helping to protect that soil that's underneath. Your soil temperatures are going to stay a little bit cooler in the summertime, and you're not going to be having as much evaporation out of those areas. So it does help to preserve moisture when we need it most during that growing season. And when we do get a rain, all of that residue that's on the surface is going to help absorb some of that moisture and help make sure that it gets into the ground so that the moisture is something that we can use instead of having it run off too fast. So it does give us benefits on both sides of it when we're trying to play into that weather aspect. Back to the part of building an ideal seed bed. Tillage has been a part of agriculture for ever since we've been doing it, I guess, if we look back that far. And we think about the original reasons for needing tillage. We had to help open up the soil. We had to help make sure that it was lifted up in a way that we could get moisture into it. We could get air down in there because we do want to have that nice mix of air and moisture around your seed bed. And in earlier days, we needed to really help open up that soil as well because of the reduced emergence or vigor that some of the earlier hybrids had. As we progress to where we're at today, some of the hybrids that are out there, I mean, corn specifically, they can really grow through a lot of tough conditions. However, we still want to be setting the stage by giving it the best environment to succeed. So as we're creating that ideal seed bed, we want to have a row unit that can effectively prepare that soil by tilling it up, loosening it up in a way that's going to allow that planter to have a good ride as it's heading through the field. And then as we add the fertility aspect of it, we do have some really lush, beautiful soils in the Midwest that we're farming with, but we still need to supplement them with additional fertility. So as you're adding nutrients out there, whether it's dry fertilizer or liquid, whatever your fertilizer program looks like, we need to be helping support that growing crop by putting the nutrients in an area where the roots can get to it. And I'll say that again, we need to put it in an area where the roots can get to it. If you think about broadcasting fertilizer over the top of your soil surface on the top of the field, some of the nutrients aren't going to be in an area where the roots can get to them during that cropping season. So think of something like your potash or your phosphates. they're not going to be moving very far in the soil. So unless you're putting it into a zone where the roots can tap into it, you might not be getting a full return on your fertilizer investment in that year. Conversely, if we compare that to strip till and we're dropping fertilizer down into an area where the roots are going to be expressing, you got a higher opportunity to uptake that fertilizer and give you a better performance out of your crop. So one question that we sometimes get is, since we're putting the fertilizer into a more condensed area, can we be using less of it? And the answer would be maybe. We got to be very cautious when we look at that, because the removal rates for a crop, we still need to have a adequate amount of fertilizer out there so that it's not scavenging and pulling down your fertility levels in the field. So in some cases, if you've got some high testing fields, you could have an opportunity to be more frugal with your fertilizer investment. Other people have taken the approach where they're going to spend the same amount on fertilizer, but put it closer to the seed, so have a better chance for pushing yields higher. Either one has shown that it can be successful, but it comes back to matching up to the goals of your farm and where your initial fertility levels are for how prudent we can be with or how frugal we can be with pulling back those fertility rates. Shifting over to the SoilWarrior side of this, as we're looking at that screen right there, you're seeing the end of one of our SoilWarriors with the SoilWarrior XRow unit. This is a row unit that's been around ever since the initial days of environmental tillage systems, and the XRow unit was designed to be using coulters for the tillage. So you look at the row unit from left to right on your screen right there. We've got our zone cleaners up front. They're going to be able to clear the residue out of the way, followed by a lead coulter. That's going to do the initial cutting and slicing as we're creating a strip. And then there's two 20-inch tall tillage coulters that are running. They're physically about 6 inches apart from each other, but they're going to be reaching down to a depth of about 6 inches and creating a strip that's about 10 inches wide. And then those large black discs that you see behind that, those are called our containment coulters. They act like giant mud flaps to catch all of the dirt that's being loosened up and dislodged. They keep it in place, mix the fertilizer in, and then cover it back up. And then out the back, that's where you've got your rolling basket that's going to give you the consistency for your planter when you're coming back to seed your field down. The XRow unit has been proven over many years. It's a very durable platform, and it's one that we still sell today. As I talked about the coulters doing the tillage there, that is something that differentiates us from some of the other row units that are out there in the marketplace today. We love what coulters can do, their ability to cut and mix the soil along with the residue. They can handle very high residue situations, and they also give you the flexibility to work when conditions are less than ideal. The way a coulter is doing its tillage is it slices into the soil, and then it grabs the soil directly next to the coulter, and then that soil adheres next to it, and there's a lifting aspect as you pull the soil to the surface. That's a little bit different than the way a shank is going to operate, like some of our competitors offer, or even our shank options. When you run a shank in conditions that are a little bit less than ideal, it's typically too wet, you can have the risk of having sidewall compaction that happens, or a smearing that happens along the side of where that shank is running. Because as that shank digs through the soil, some of the dirt is pushed off to the side of it, as some of it comes to the surface, and then that can really create an environment where there's root restrictions later on in the year. So if you're running a shank in the spring specifically, that can be a little bit scary if conditions are less than ideal. So based on that concept, that's why a lot of the row units that we put out at SoilWarrior are going to be a coulter-based system. We like the way that they can give you a consistent strip. They can run in a wider range of conditions, and they have proven that the strip creation that they form really does lead the industry. We have expanded from that XRow unit, and we do have more row units that we're offering. Across the top of your page right there, the row unit that is black in color, that is our Edge row unit. That same framework of a row unit can be set up with coulters, as you see on the top left, or a shank, as you see on the top right. You also have the ability to change between those. So there is still a place for a shank. That's going to get you down to a deeper depth and physically rip things open. It's a nice way of creating a strip in the fall, or when conditions are very dry and compacted. Being able to physically rip open that soil does have a place. And when we're putting down anhydrous ammonia, using a shank is going to be the best option to do that, because we need to make sure we're getting that ammonia down to a depth where we can safely seal it up and not have any of it lost off into the atmosphere. So again, that edge row unit that you're seeing up there on the top, it's got a pair of airbags that do a nice job of managing the depth and downforce on that row unit, and having the flexibility to change between shanks and coulters really does separate that from the rest of the industry. As we look across the bottom left is going to be the XRow unit that we had a picture of just a moment ago. And then over to the right side is going to be our N-row unit. This one's been around and proven itself for multiple years. It's going to have that lead coulter followed by a shank and be able to handle in some of those tough conditions, rocky conditions. It does a nice job being able to flow up and over some of those rocks as we go into the tougher areas. Any one of these row units can be the right row unit for you, depending on what the goals are for your farm. We've got a lot of faith in what each one of them can do, but we need to make sure that as we're sitting down to work with a producer, we're asking questions for what their goals are, what their fertilizer program is, the type of farm that they're going to be working with or soils they're working with, to make sure that we can help get the right row unit for their farm. And then beyond the row unit, we have the rest of the fertilizer system that comes along with it. And this is what the whole idea of a SoilWarrior is. It's not just an individual component that you're going to be putting onto your farm. It really is a whole system. And with the system comes the experience of the ETS team. Like I said, for 20 years, we've been focused solely on strip till, and we have a whole staff and crew of people that truly believe that strip tillage is the answer and it's a better way of farming. And with that 20 years of experience comes a lot of knowledge for how to set up our machines, some watch outs for things to avoid. And we really do want to be partners with you on your farm. So we'll help you figure out what type of strip till setup is going to be the best for you, which row units are going to be your best fit. And then we do show up to your farm with you to help get it set up, hooked up to your tractor, calibrated and working, because we want you to have a good experience with strip till and make sure that our soil warriors are doing what you're hoping to achieve. Looking across the bottom of the page there, just give a little bit of an overview of what we have for machines that are available. Across the bottom on the left, you can see that folded up SoilWarrior. That would be a view of our 3-point mounted edge system. We can go up to 16 rows wide with that. We do have lift assist wheels that are available to carry the load of that and make sure that it's balanced and safe on your machine. That 3-point mounted system gives you a very cost-effective way to be delivering strips onto his farm. We have customers that will do those with fertilizer, some guys that will do them without. They're just using it for strip creation. But if we're doing fertilizer with that, we could put saddle tanks on the tractor or use a wide range of carts out the back, whether it's a 2-wheel steerable cart or a 4-wheel wagon style. We can really customize that for whatever a guy's looking for. Bottom center is going to be our 3100 series of SoilWarrior. That's going to be a little bit smaller size, so 4 rows up to 8 rows. It's going to be a single dry fertilizer tank, or we could put a liquid tank on there. It's going to be a little bit more of a condensed down version, more of a cost-effective option for guys that want to be getting a SoilWarrior on their farm, but don't have a high number of acres that they're trying to cover. Next to that in the corner would be the opposite end of the spectrum. That is a 24-row SoilWarrior. We call it our 50-60. The 60 represents the width of the machine, so that would be 24 rows wide on a 30-inch spacing. But we can do that with a dry fertilizer setup or liquid. We do have a lot of flexibility using whatever type of fertilizer a customer wants to use on their farm. So we do have a lot of effective liquid systems or dry. Most of the pictures you see on the bottom of the page, those are 30-inch spacing. The liquid machine, that's going to be 20-inch spacing, I believe, because we do build SoilWarriors to meet the row spacing that's going to be on your farm. We can go wide rows of 36 rows or 38. 30 inch is going to be our most common setup, but we do have a high number of units that are out in 22-inch and even down to a 20-inch spacing. Some of those narrow row producers are more of the proactive and progressive thinkers on their farming operation, willing to try new things, and we have SoilWarriors that fit right into what they're trying to do. I will admit that when we get down to those narrower row spacings, residue management becomes a bigger challenge, just because you have less room between each of the rows where you're trying to manage that residue and force it between your strips. So as somebody's looking at transitioning over to strip tillage, that's something to keep in mind. There are some other manufacturers out there that are building strip till systems right now, but the narrow row configuration has been something that's a challenge for some of the equipment manufacturers. So that's going to cover what I've got here in the presentation side of it. Again, if you've got questions about Soil Warriors, our website and phone number are listed on there. You can call up to our main office, and we have a staff of people that'll be happy to answer any questions or put you in contact with the proper person to help get down to get some answers for whatever you might be working with on your farm. All right. So that was kind of a down and dirty version of what we've got at Soil Warrior, some of the things that we've went through over the last 20 years and what we have to offer. You guys want to share a little bit about your history with strip tillage and then how you ended up to be a Soil Warrior owner, and I guess what you went through to get to where you're at today.
Yeah, so about 7 years ago, we decided to buy a used machine, not a Soil Warrior, but a competitor's. And I just wanted to kind of get introduced and see what I liked and what I didn't like about strip tillage, just kind of get my feet wet. And we ran that one for a couple years, 3 years, and it just I found some things out that it was a shank machine that I didn't particularly like, and a couple of the other things I didn't extremely like. I really wanted to do all my corn stalks because I strip till all my beans, and that I really struggled was to go through that 200 plus bushel corn stalks and do a nice job and not have to wait for that perfect day to strip till them acres. And I really fought that, and that's kind of why I kind of was always drawn to the Soil Warrior. And it's been great on getting through all them corn stalks. And then I always, in the back of my mind, I always kind of worried about that fall, that it's either too wet or like it was too dry. And which we had last year. We were pretty much in a drought, and then we were going to wait for a rain, and it rained, and then it got too wet and froze up. And I wanted to have a machine that I have the option that I can do spring strips. And I know that with all the studies that Soil Warrior has done everything, I wasn't losing anything going from a fall strip to a spring strip. And that was huge to me, because I don't want to be a next year guy. I want to be that guy that, okay, this year I'm going to, shoot for my yield goals. And I don't want to say, well, maybe next year we'll do a little bit different. And that's kind of why I really like the Soil Warrior, is I can kind of do that and have that flexibility if I have to.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about not wanting to wait till next year. As you think about a farming career that a person has, we've likely, a lot of guys on this call, farming, you only get one chance per year. So you might only get 40 seasons to farm in your entire lifetime. So we can't really afford to be putting it off till the next season. We got to make every season count. And you talked about wanting to get your strips done in the fall, but having the ability to come back in the spring. I remember when you were exploring the options of getting into a Soil Warrior, that's something that we talked about quite a bit. A common question that we get here is, when is the best time to make strips? And I guess the way that I've approached this, and I'm hearing it from you too, is fall is going to be my plan A. If the weather cooperates in the fall, I'd like to get my strips down, because then in the springtime, I can focus 100% on planting and not have to be worried about tillage or fertilizer application. So my first goal would be to try to get it done in the fall. But we also don't want to sacrifice the strip creation or the performance that we're getting out of a machine by being out there when the weather doesn't cooperate. Because up here in northern Iowa where we farm, sometimes there's falls where there's snow hitting the combine before it's done, or you're focused so much on harvest that there isn't really a good opportunity to get those fall strips done. And like you said, it's nice to be able to come back, put your strips out there in the spring, and have confidence that the machine is going to be able to do everything that you want and do it effectively. And you're not going to be taking your top end off the table just because of the season that you're heading out there.
Exactly. And I also discussed with a lot of people, I think there's nothing better than pulling in on old stale strips for me that were made in the fall and plant. Them row units just glide over that, that perfect seed bed. It's just unbelievable how good your emergence ends up getting, because your planter box ain't jumping around. It just rides so nice and smooth.
Yeah, a lot of the planters these days have the technology to actually measure the ride quality that they have. And we continually hear people bragging about the extremely consistent experience that they've got planting on top of strips. If we do a nice job creating a strip, that planter is having an excellent ride that's out there, and that leads to better seed placement and then helps give you better emergence too. So it does all come together to help drive yields higher.
Definitely does. It's one thing you always got to remember is when we're making that pass, we're making our seed bed for our next pass.
Mm-hmm. When you think back to years ago when you first got into strip tilling, what were your goals when you started stripping? Why did you even look at it in the first place?
One of the big things is, my folks were getting older, and I knew that we were going to be kind of it's going to be hard for us to get labor because it's just going to be me and Tricia. And so I was kind of wanting to look into some of that. Let's just make it a little bit less passes across the field and, less equipment. And, we've been able to succeed on that as, we've been able to sell our ripper. We've been able to sell our big field cultivator and our really big tractor. We kind of were able to streamline our equipment and just kind of, just rely on, basically, the SoilWarrior and the plant, just kind of two pieces of equipment, for our farm operation.
Yeah, it really does help improve the efficiency and the condenses down the line of equipment that you need to have. The SoilWarrior is a large investment, a financial commitment when you're buying one to put it on your farm. I mean, we put a lot of technology and engineering into the SoilWarrior machine, and there is a cost involved with that. But you mentioned selling off some of the other pieces of equipment that a guy has. So if you're getting rid of that ripper, that fertilizer applicator, that cultivator or vertical tillage tool, whatever that is, if you can remove all those pieces of equipment, all of a sudden the cost of that SoilWarrior becomes very manageable because you're putting your money into a better investment spot. And then you also pick up efficiencies each year because you're going to have less hours on the tractor, potentially less fertilizer dollars if you're putting it into a better place. I mean, it's a lot more efficiency that you're picking up.
And you're not spending as much fuel. The fuel savings is huge also.
Yes. All that stuff adds up to making a smart choice, a more efficient choice when you're out there. So when I switched from the conventional tillage practices over to strip till, I was being an efficiency-minded person. I wanted to remove some of them extra passes. But since I've been with SoilWarrior, I have been surprised how many people are currently doing no-till that are looking at coming back and implementing some type of tillage onto their farm. That one was a bit of a surprise for me because I see all the benefits as improvements when we're coming to strip till. Less passes, more efficiency, and it makes a whole lot of logical sense to me. And I hadn't really considered it from the other side of it. Some of the long-term no-tillers have said that they feel as though they've reached a plateau and they need to help their farm a little bit, whether it's from nutrient stratification, from putting all of their fertilizer on the surface year after year after year, and they've got high levels of fertility up top, but their roots aren't getting to it because it's in the wrong place. Some of that needs to be cycled into a lower point in the field. So they wanted to implement some tillage. They don't want to completely till the field and upset all of the soil health benefits that they've gained over the years, but they wanted to strategically implement a little bit of tillage back into it. And then the other part of it that I hear from them is just on uniform emergence out of their corn crop specifically. Beans as well, they like to have even emergence, but corn is kind of a princess crop where it needs to be taken care of and can't handle having a bad day. So they want to make sure that they're giving that corn crop a consistent chance to get out of the field. So by doing a little bit of tillage to help loosen up some of that soil, help mix in the fertilizer, and then warm it up a little bit has proven good results for them no-tillers that are strategically implementing strip till on their farm too.
Exactly. We're talking about the SoilWarrior when I was figuring out what I need to switch over to. And the one thing that always kind of stuck in my mind is it's a very common strip till machine that's out there, but they don't have parallel arms. So, unfortunately, I don't always spray when the ground is perfect, and I could leave some divots in there when I sprayed. And like the SoilWarrior with the parallel arms, I can actually go down and do some tillage on them, on them tracks, and kind of help get that compaction ripped out versus kind of what the other competitor did not, I couldn't do with it.
Yeah, when you made the change over to a SoilWarrior, it felt like you were maybe stepping up and getting really serious about it at that point. because something that I've heard with multiple customers is they've been interested in strip till, but not ready to make the leap to come over to the strip till side of it, because change can be scary. Back to that quote with Wayne Gretzky, skating to where the puck is going to be. I mean, a lot of people can see the goal of where they want to be up their farm for strip till, but it does take a lot to make that change. So it's not uncommon to have guys that will try strip till on their farm, whether it's having a neighbor do a couple fields for them so they can create a comfort level, or we've had some customers build their own strip till machine or buy a competitor that's not necessarily giving them everything that they want and proving that the concept works. And then they get serious and they buy the machine that they want to have. And my advice to some of the people that might be on this webinar right now would be to slow down and think about where you want to go and make sure you're not sacrificing any years of your farming career to make that change. Because something that I guess it's good to hear a customer say they wish they would have made the change sooner, but it's also a little bit sad because they could have wasted a few years of their farming career where if they would have made the change when they wanted to, they could have put them in a better spot. So anybody that's thinking about strip till, I would encourage you to ask people that have been doing it, create a network of people or reach out, whether it's to the ETS team or somebody that's doing strip till on their farm right now, and get an honest opinion from them, because we have a lot of people that are making the change over to strip till every year and proving that the concept works. So don't be dragging your feet too long and wasting those years of benefits that you could be getting now.
Yeah, if anybody ever wants to get hold of me, I love talking about strip till and how we changed over and what's really changed is like our soil tilth and our soil health. It's kind of neat to be out there digging for corn or whatever, and all you always run into earthworms. I mean, it's really kind of amazing how much all that stuff's changed on just what the soil just changed into.
Yes. The soils, it's a living environment that's got so much potential to it. And unfortunately, some of these fields have been tilled too much. And I had this on my own ground too. Too much tillage breaks down that soil structure, and it seems like the soil packs down too hard. And the only solution is to go back out there and till it again to loosen it up. And you create a cycle where too much tillage requires more tillage. But once you're able to break that cycle, it's fun to see the soil change. Turns into kind of like a sponge where it can carry a load nicely. Water can get into it. There's air down there in the root zone, and you can see it when you're digging roots of your plants too. They just thrive in that environment. It's like
each strip is almost like a little garden. It's just like a little garden that your plant grows out of, and it just shoots out of the ground. It seems like.
It's fun to expose new people to it. We have our 3-row demo warrior that the ETS team can bring out to a customer's farm, and it allows us to make strips on their field for them to get down and really evaluate what our row unit can do. And it's happened multiple times where I see somebody get down on their hands and knees and start digging into that strip, and it can just be like an eye-opening experience for them where they're digging down with their hands, seeing that root zone that they really want to have, that strip that's created, and it's just lush, mellow soil, and it's like the light bulb goes on that, yes, this is what I've been looking for. So to see that happen on your own farm and then take it full circle where you then plant into it and then see the performance results, it's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, for sure. I ran the new farm this year, and it was amazing because a farm that's been full tilt, a lot of tillage. And, it was amazing how much harder the SoilWarrior pulled in that farm compared to all of our farms, and you get out there and just the structure of the ground is just has changed. It's just so much different than what ours is. And I like to take one of them, the one that measured the density, the penetrometer, and just kind of see like over the years how fast I can change this ground to make it like my other ground is now. Because I farm stuff right across the fence that, it's quite a bit different.
Yes, it is fun to see that change. Something that I experienced a couple weeks ago, about 10 days ago now, I guess it was, we had some extreme winds blowing in this area up here in northern Iowa. And unfortunately, there was a little bit more erosion in this area than what I would like to see. There's a lot of strip till that's been implemented, but still plenty of farms that are fully tilled. And some of that beautiful black soil was going for a ride with the wind. And that's got a negative impact. You're losing that valuable resource as it blows away. And there was also some crops that were emerged, corn and soybeans both, that took a step backwards because of the sandblasting that was happening with that high wind. So that erosion is something that we can help reduce when we switch over to strip till. By having that zone that's tilled up, but then the residue between it does really reduce your chances of erosion, especially when the wind's blowing hard like that.
So like last spring, when we had all them rains, I've actually had neighbors come by and say, it's amazing what the difference is on the erosion that you have in your fields versus my fields. All my black dirt is in the ditch, and yours is just kind of staying put because, yours is all in strips.
Yeah. Each one of those changes makes a difference, whether it's water erosion or wind erosion. I mean, it's like I said, it's a valuable resource. We want to keep it into our fields.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
The other part of that would be I fear the day where some of our government agencies step in and try to mandate some practices of change. I think voluntary change is going to be a whole lot better way of doing it to allow farmers to be better with the tillage that they're doing and then their nutrient management too, as they're putting fertilizer rates out there, because I'd hate to see overreach from the government because they're seeing situations where there is too much wind erosion or water erosion and we're losing that soil.
Exactly. Yeah, it's nice to be able to put your phosphorus down in the ground and not on top.
Certainly is, yes. Very good. Anything else that you guys would like to share, or we can kick it back over to Noah to see if there's any questions that have been passed in from the team.
Well, I think the network that ETS has been great. There ain't no actual dealers. Some people talk to me and worry about that, and I tell them, what, they've been so great to work with. Parts have been great. I mean, it's a really good group of people to work with, and not ever to be scared of not getting the things that you need for your SoilWarrior.
Well, and I like that you guys are solely a strip till machine manufacturer. You guys aren't running, different lines of equipment. You guys focus on that and you do it the best around, I guess.
I appreciate you bringing that up, and I appreciate you saying that too, because it is something that we do take a lot of pride in, is the customer experience. We want to be a company that's doing a whole lot more than just selling a piece of equipment and having it be cash and carry. We do want to be viewed as a partner on your farm. And like I mentioned, we're based out of Faribault, Minnesota, and we do all of our sales direct from the factory. We have salespeople that live remotely across the U.S. as well as service people. But if there's an issue, we come right to your farm with company personnel, whether it's in the sales part of the process or the service issue. I mean, we have traveling service technicians that are phenomenal. They know these machines inside and out. And if there's an issue on your farm, we're there to help you get through it. But we also try to build a machine that is maybe a little more durable and user-friendly than some of the other things or other pieces of equipment that are out there. We put a lot of steel into a SoilWarrior. Anybody that's been around one knows that they're a really heavy built machine. And then the components that we're using higher quality components, better engineering parts like the hubs that we're using, the oil bath hubs that we have on our coulters. We try to build a machine that's going to be effectively working for you all season long so that you're not going to be fighting that downtime or those repairs. So I'm glad to hear that you guys have had a good experience with that too, because we really do try to position it that way.
Yeah, but it's been really good. And if I remember right, when I was visiting with you, I thought you had said like the original couple SoilWarriors that were originally made, they're still out doing their job.
Yeah, of the first five, I know it's three, and it might even be the fourth one that's still in existence. They've had a little bit of reworking since then, so there's been some bearings and bushings that have been replaced. But those first machines are still working for customers right now and earning their place on the farm. So we have a long life expectancy out of each of these SoilWarriors that we build, and they continue to prove that they can handle the rigors that happen out on a farm.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, some great conversation. I'll jump in here. We have time for questions from the audience. Again, if you have any questions, Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, you can get those typed in now. So Russell, he's currently strip tilling with a competitor's row unit. It's an all coulter system, and they do a lot of cover crops. He says that they are interested in strip tilling into green covers for corn in the future. So what experience do you have in understanding how a SoilWarrior with all coulters will perform in green covers in the spring?
So yeah, we have customers that are doing that right now. The Coulter system does a nice job of continually cutting and trying to clean itself out as it rolls across the field. When he says that he's got those green covers out there, I would like to know exactly what that cover crop mix looks like, because depending on where he's located at and the amount of growth that he's getting, that could bring some limitations forward. However, I will say that in most conditions, we're able to handle that very effectively. We've got guys that are going into rye, full seeded rye to make strips. Rye can be anywhere up to a few feet tall with some nice growth, and we can effectively cut, mix everything, and give a seed bed that's ready to be planted into. So we should be able to handle that, but I don't want to overcommit till I know exactly what type of covers he's working with, because some of those custom mixes that are out there can be very dense, and I'd want to try it small scale before I commit to being able to handle it. But that Coulter style of row unit that we've got, whether it's the Edge with the 3 Coulters or the X, they're both running that same configuration to them, and they do such a nice job of being able to lay down that cover and then slice it and prepare the strip.
All right. Tanner wants to know if you're using less fertilizer because you're putting it in the strip, and if so, what percentage did you cut your rates?
So I'll be very upfront with that one. The legal side of our environmental tillage system team has said, be very cautious when we start recommending fertilizer rates, because we don't want to have a customer taking a step backwards on their farm by not having enough fertilizer that's out there. So if we don't know what the soil tests look like or what type of rates you're starting with, we want to be careful to talk about how much you can cut back. So that would be a good question to sit down. We'd be happy to sit in the same room talking with your agronomist and looking at your soil test to see where you're at right now and what your goals are moving forward. So that would be the cover my butt type of answer. But I will say that on a farm that's been progressively farmed, so if you're doing full width tillage and you're putting fertilizer rates out there that are satisfying all of your removal rates, or maybe you're looking at, you've had multiple years of build rates that you're putting out there for your P and your K, we could be pulling back to maybe that removal rate and keep it there. That's a place where you're going to be long term. Because one thing that a lot of the universities and the professional areas agree upon is how much of your nutrient leaves with a bushel of corn. There's so many pounds of P and K that are walking off the farm with every bushel of corn that gets taken off. So we need to be cognizant of that. Otherwise, you're going to be running the risk of depleting your soil tests long term. So we don't want to be having your P and K nutrient levels dropping over time. So pulling back to removal rates would probably be a good place to start out with. But I will say that we've had customers talk about a 40%, 30% or 40% savings over what they were doing before and not seeing any detriment to it. So then if you think about why that can happen, if you're broadcasting your fertilizer, you're spreading it across the entire farm, but you're only putting your roots into maybe a third of the area, then you don't need to be putting as much fertilizer out there. So from a conceptual standpoint, by putting less fertilizer into an area where the roots are going to be able to take it up, you're going to have a higher concentration of fertilizer in that root zone, because instead of spreading it on the whole 30 inches, now you're spreading it into roughly a 10-inch zone, if you want to think about it that way. So I realize I didn't give you a firm answer right there, but that one we got to be a little bit cautious at to see what you're at in your fields right now and what you're considering for fertilizer rates. And that would be, I will also put the caveat, that's going to be on the P and K side of it. As we start looking at some of the micronutrients that are out there, I would recommend probably not pulling back on those, because if you think of something like zinc, for example, you're having only a few pounds of that maybe putting out there for a corn crop. So if you think about spreading a pound of fertilizer across an area the size of a football field, you're not really going to be wanting to cut that back a little bit. But I can confidently say that by putting it closer to where the seed's going to be, you've got a higher chance of uptaking those micronutrients that are going to be put out there at such a low level. And then the other side would be nitrogen rates. We typically don't have producers pulling back their nitrogen rates because roots can usually scavenge pretty good for the available nitrogen that's out there in the field. So nitrogen usually stays the same. Your other macros, you might have a chance to pull back a little bit, but micronutrients, you're probably going to want to keep those at the same rates as if you were broadcasting.
Yeah, Mike and Tricia, anything to add to that? In the nutrient management department, how's StripTilling kind of increased your efficiency?
So when I was first getting into it, I left some checks out there, and I left so I'm actually currently using pretty much exactly about my same rates as I was when doing a broadcast. I kind of left my rates the way they were because I was getting, on a lot of my stuff around on some amount of my ground, like 10 to 15 bushel bumps. And I figured, you know what, I'm going to leave my fertilizer where it's at, because I'm more than making up for that in value of crops. So, and then I've been kind of pushing them levels up a little more and just trying to get more and more yield out of my field. So I've never been a guy that's been cutting back. I guess I've been kind of keeping on this way, or not, maybe even pushing a little bit more to try to raise some of them yields.
Gotcha. We have another question now from the audience. They want to know, how do you determine the need to refresh strips in the spring, and what tool would you recommend?
So I'd start out by saying the first plan would be to not need to refresh the strips. If we build a proper strip in the fall and it overwinters as we would expect, you shouldn't need to go out there and dress it up again in the spring. So that's our first plan with most of our customers in the areas that we're doing strip till. If somebody wants to freshen up the strips, my question would be why? Are we hoping to fix something that we didn't do right the first time when the strip was created? Or is the goal to maybe move residue out of the way or to apply nutrients? Some customers do plan on freshening their strip because they want to put nitrogen out there in the spring. So I can understand that. Nitrogen management is a key part of farming in general and strip till specifically. So if you want to have a pass out there to put nitrogen out and feel like freshening up your strip is a good way of doing that, I'm not opposed to it at all. But I guess for most of our producers, it's a one pass preparation for planting and no freshening up is needed. The one caveat that I will say would be if we have residue that moves, that can be a concern for some producers. So when we create a strip, we're going to try to move the residue off to the side. And ideally, we want to have very black defined strips that you can see in the spring. But depending on how the winter goes, sometimes some rains will move residue or wind, and you can have part of that strip that has some residue on top of it. A good set of row cleaners on a planter can typically clean that out of the way and prevent any issues there. But if you did have a high level of residue that moved and basically overwhelmed your strips, there could be an opportunity to go out there and move that residue to clean it off to the side. That would help the warming up and drying out of that strip. But typically, that's not something that we have to deal with.
All right, we have time for one or two more questions if anyone has any others, if they want to type into the Q&A box, bottom of your screen. One thing interesting about the SoilWarrior that I've seen some people do is seed cover crops with one of the bins. So
yes.
Can you touch on that a bit? And boy, that's pretty unique.
Yeah, that is, I guess with all of the cover crop conversations that have been had the last few years, there's also some programs to help incentivize the use of cover crops. We do have the option of seeding that at the same time that you're doing your strips. So when we look at our dry fertilizer systems that I was showing some pictures of, we have an option to build a fertilizer tank that can be used for covers. So there would be 2 fertilizer tanks with 1 cover crop tank in between there. So you can do everything in the same pass across the field. That would be 2 different products that you're applying the fertilizer with, and then variable rating the covers as well. Fertilizer would go in the strip. Covers typically get blown between the strips. And then in one pass, you're doing everything you would need. Another advancement that we had was at the Commodity Classic show earlier this year. We unveiled a cover crop seeder attachment that goes on the front of the SoilWarrior. This would be a separate tank and metering system that can be added to existing SoilWarriors. It's actually a partnership that we had with Montag. Montag created a poly tank and a metering system for it so that we could bolt it onto our SoilWarriors and then have one machine doing everything in one pass. So that's been a very nice addition to help open up more opportunities for us for guys that want to be doing a better job of farming and managing that soil health by putting covers out there. So it has been a fun addition for us.
We have a comment from the crowd. He said that he used his Warrior to freshen and apply urea to fall-made strips this spring, and he said it worked well. So there you go.
That's great to hear. Urea is a fine nitrogen source. as long as it's put into the soil. That's something that you got to be kind of careful with because urea has the ability to volatilize. So if you put it on top of the surface, you can lose some of that nitrogen value. So if you're going to be applying urea, covering it up in a strip is the best way to be using it. So very good option to have.
All right, well, we're coming up on 3:00 here, so I think we're going to start to wrap things up. And before we go, Mike and Tricia and Sean as well, any final words or advice to people out there who might maybe first-time strip tillers or beginner strip tillers or people who are thinking about getting into strip till? What would you tell them?
Well, I want to start out by saying thanks to everybody that took the time to listen to us today. If you're considering strip till, that's the first step. You're showing that you're open-minded to other practices that are out there. So I would encourage you to keep exploring that topic. If you have a neighbor that's been doing it, talk to them. If you want to call up to ETS, we would love to answer any questions that you might have or put you in contact with somebody that's already doing it. Sometimes farmers can be a little bit competitive with their neighbors and not necessarily talk about practices when they're making a change. So if you don't feel as though you've got a neighbor that you can talk to, let us help you find somebody that will give you an honest opinion about strip till and how it can work. Because we've seen it work in all sorts of environments, from, like I shared earlier, some of the rockiest, toughest soils to heavy clays to light sand to beautiful black dirt. So, I mean, we can make strip till work in any environment. So if you're thinking about it on your farm, keep going with those thoughts, ask questions and help us answer questions that maybe you haven't even thought of yet so that we can help you get over to implementing strip till and have it be successful for you. Because you people shouldn't have to go through the same learning curves that some of the early adopters did. There's no reason to keep relearning the same mistakes if somebody else has already went through it. So ask the questions and let us help you out.
If you can find someone just to try, 40 acres on or whatever, that'd be the best way for you to see what it can truly do. And another thing I always said was, you don't have to buy a brand new unit. I mean, you can kind of step your way up into, buy a used unit and see what you like and what you don't like. And then you can kind of, work from there, kind of like we did. And that way you kind of get what you want. And like I said, just because the neighbors are doing what they're doing doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. Maybe, the strip till is the way to, I think strip till is kind of the way everybody needs to kind of start going towards, especially like with that phosphorus stuff we were talking about, try to get, so we don't get any of that runoff and we don't need any more government regulations than we already got. And if anybody ever wants to talk strip till, I'm always available to talk. So.
Yeah, same thing with us here at ETS. We'd love to sell you a SoilWarrior, but my first priority would be to have somebody get into strip till first. So there's plenty of people that we want to talk to. So even if you're not ready to be making a purchase or you're a little daunted by the thought of buying a SoilWarrior, don't hesitate to call because we'd still like to help answer any questions that you might have.
Right. And I want to tell people too, if they do end up with a SoilWarrior, you guys' customer support and, tech support has been second to none. Just the availability to answer questions, even year over year, things that you might have forgotten from the season before. You guys are always available and very, very helpful.
Yeah, that's one big thing I've noticed about the strip till community, the networking, and it seems like you guys are really willing to share information and help people out and not afraid to kind of buck the trend and go against the grain.
I want to find the best way to farm and help other people do the same thing. I want to see success, and the successes that I've personally witnessed with strip till has got me excited, and I want to help cascade that to others.
100%. I agree.
All right. Great stuff, guys. I want to say thank you to Mike and Tricia Jaeger for taking the time to join us today. And big thanks to Sean Arthur and everyone at Environmental Tillage Systems for putting this presentation together for us. And again, we recorded this session, so we'll have the recording posted shortly on striptillfarmer.com and also our YouTube channel if you want to go back and rewatch it, or again, share it with anyone else on your farm or coworkers or friends. Definitely do that. So on behalf of Environmental Tillage Systems, Mike and Tricia Jaeger and Sean Arthur, thanks so much for joining us for today's Strip Till Farmer webinar, and hope you have a great day. We'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you.